Motion to take up item 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This is from Panich, Rivera, Talheimer, Purcell, Anderson, Burgos, and McGrath Smith. Order that the Holyoke zoning ordinance be amended to add a definition of data center as a use and to clarify that this use is not allowable in any zoning district in the city. The public hearing was closed on the 14th of April and then was referred back to committee last week from council, and that's why it is here. You will notice that you have language in front of you from our law department responding to the issues that were brought to them based on the city council meeting. So a couple things that I want to name that's in this language before we open it up for conversation, comments, and questions for our solicitor, who of course we can hear from as well. You will notice that underneath data center, we have a definition: a building or series of buildings that houses and supports the high-performance servers, storage systems, networking equipment, and related computing infrastructure and equipment necessary for storing, processing, and distributing data and applications. And then we are striking the following language from our definition of warehouse. This was discovered by our city solicitors as they were initially considering what other ordinance changes may need to be made in order to put this in place, and looked for the language that had originally allowed the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center to be joined, to be added to the city. And so underneath warehouse, striking the language that allowed that. So right now our warehouse definition says a building used primarily for the storage of goods and materials for distribution, but not for sale on the premises, including the storage of data and digital information. So from the city solicitor, the recommendation is that we strike that language, including the storage of data and digital information, from our definition of warehouse. Then underneath the table of principal uses, it would say no across the board in all of the zoning, on all the zones that we have. And then on the back page, there's language that says Section 3. The City of Holyoke shall enact a moratorium on the application for or building of new data centers defined in Section 2.0 of the Holyoke zoning ordinances. The purpose of the moratorium is to provide the City Council with time to form an ad hoc committee to study the impacts of commercial data center development in Holyoke, including electrical demand, water consumption, environmental impact, tax revenue, economic development opportunities, zoning considerations, public safety concerns, and best practices adopted by other municipalities, and to make recommendations to the City Council regarding potential zoning and permitting requirements. The moratorium will be in effect starting June 16th, 2026, upon adoption at the City Council meeting. The moratorium will be in place until June 30th, 2028. Said moratorium prohibits acceptance by the City of Holyoke of any new applications and permits for zoning permissions and decisions for the intended purpose of the development and operation of a data center. Should the Holyoke zoning code be amended prior to the expiration of the moratorium period to regulate data centers, the moratorium shall terminate on the effective date of amendment. The moratorium period may be extended one time by a 2/3 vote of the City Council, not to exceed 180 days. Section 4. The current and future use of land owned, leased, or operated by the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center Incorporated for data center purposes within the general industry district shall continue as a permitted use up to 12 megawatts. Section 5. All ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. And Section 64. This ordinance shall take effect upon its passage. Councilor Rivera?
So this is not the same language from the other day then, is that correct?
That is correct.
Where is the language from the other day?
If you go to item 3 in your packet, you will see the language that was in front of council.
So I guess for me is, when did we request the other stuff that was put into the language?
Mm-hmm. So what came out of the council meeting were...
I mean, ordinance committee, like us.
I mean, the answer to that, and you know what it is that this represents what came out of council. And the reason that it was referred back to our committee was in order for us to consider changes that needed to be made from what we sent, because there were concerns raised around the practicality of a ban versus a moratorium, and also around the need to more clearly define the ability of the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center to continue operating.
Oh, that came from that council meeting? I don't remember all
And
that.
then the solicitors then did their work and did their research. And I believe it makes sense to have Attorney Bissonnette speak to that, because this came out of them being able to look at that language.
Usually when we ask for language, the committee opines, and the language gets developed based on what the committee opines. Mm-hmm. Here, the language is developed by the law department, and now we opine, if that's the case.
I think from their perspective, it was developed based on the opining that occurred during the city council meeting, and it was sent back to us. And so they wanted to make sure that we had real language to look at, especially given the time frame. But I also see Solicitor Bissonnette on. Solicitor Bissonnette, would you mind at this point giving a brief overview of the process and thinking here?
Be glad to. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Bonjour, Councilor Francis. Let's start off with something no one knew until 2 days ago. A town in Massachusetts enacted a moratorium, and town meetings have changed through zoning ordinances must obtain the opinion of the Attorney General as to the validity of those changes, much like your ordinances come to the law department for approval as a form. The AG opined, and I read it actually today, about the moratorium, indicating that a closed period of time would be acceptable on an issue that requires further study, in-depth scientific analysis, has to do with issues that haven't been fully explored yet. I think all of the language they've used is ripe for use here in Holyoke on data centers. I think a moratorium will survive, whereas a ban could be challenged. So that was our concern in stealing some language from elsewhere that has already passed muster. As you can see, the other communities in Massachusetts have done one-year bans. My recommendation was 2 years with about a half-year extension. That will give the committee enough time to meet and do the research and work necessary to see if, in fact, this is something for Holyoke, where it should go, if anywhere in Holyoke, and what are some of the restrictions or requirements that should be accompanied in the application for this kind of facility. So that's where it came from, Counselor. And again, the committee is able to, within the boundaries of making an amendment, can do whatever it wishes with an order received from the council, because that's what committees are for. So thanks for the opportunity to speak, Madam Chair.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
I appreciate the work being done, Mr. Bissonnette. I know you understand that I really appreciate you and the law department and all that stuff, right? I think I still have a little bit of a problem with the fact that I didn't even write the order, to be honest. The order was created by Councilor Panich. I signed on to the order, and I think that none of that was ever communicated to at least to me, with regards to any of this, and I'm finding out this now. So for me, again, I don't know, there's this thing where the administrative state, I keep bringing it up, right? The administrative state, who gets put into place by the elected officials, the administrative state kind of starts dictating how the day-to-day goes, overpowering the elected official voice that was actually duly elected by the people. I'm not saying that's the intention that the law department is doing, and I know that they're trying to do it with the right intention, but it does kind of feel like a lot of this stuff, again, behind-the-scenes stuff, which I know that's part of politics. People could call me a politician. I don't like it, so I guess maybe I'm a politician just because I got elected. But all the behind-the-scenes stuff, to me, that's not cool. Because the reality is we got like 40 people here, and I got like over 200 emails, the most emails I've ever had in my almost 5 years as a counselor for a public comment. And right now, they're not able to comment. This is the first time I've ever seen that they're not able to comment. Like, that's just the beginning, right? I think for me, I wholeheartedly get the ideology around the moratorium and why we're doing that, but I was still on the ban level. So no matter what you guys throw at me, or whatever way you want to try to verbalize it or change it and play whatever game you want to, and I'm not saying you're doing it maliciously, you're trying to do what you need to do. But for me, I'm on the ban level. I'm sorry, and I'll digress with that.
Thank you. I have Councilor Murphy. I have Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti, and then I have Councilor Panich, and then Councilor Talheimer.
Councilor Panich actually had her hand up first, so
Councilor Panich?
yeah, let her go first.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate Councilor Rivera's comments a great deal, and I understand perfectly where he was coming from emotionally, because I was in the same place an hour and a half ago. We all found out about this very, very late, and that is no one's fault. I know the law department has been working really hard to make sure we had a path forward from here. I also want to say, I too would love to have public comment, and I would love to invite everybody back for this coming Tuesday night when we'll have a regular meeting of the City Council. Tonight, what Councilor McGrath and Solicitor Bissonnette has said is true. If we allow public comment tonight, we are potentially blowing up the protection that we currently have in the zoning law, which we worked hard and fast to get into place right now. And I too would love to hear from everybody, but tonight it is important that we not tiptoe near breaking the zoning law. So from there, I think here is my issue. I think given the public health and safety concerns that are at the core of what municipalities are allowed to do, I would think that we would have a very good chance of banning these facilities and having it stick. However, I don't think, as best I can tell from my hour and a half of all of this, that the moratorium, if we choose to go down that path, will limit our ability in the future to say, yeah, no, the information is in. There are considerations of these centers' impacts on groundwater, on heat, on quality of life in environmental justice communities, which increasing research indicates gets targeted for them. All of those things, I think, may well justify a ban under the strictest scrutiny. What I am concerned about, and this is hard to say, I feel dreadful about it because I know all of my colleagues on the council to be people of integrity who really care about the bill. I have infinite respect, after many years on the planning board, for our city solicitor's office, for the city staff in general. But I am concerned about the current wording of the changes, which I know were drafted in haste, because I don't think that we can reasonably push the entire responsibility and arguably the entire authority of reviewing these matters and giving recommendations that we might be in any way obliged to follow on an ad hoc committee. Too often, and this is the hard part, too often decisions in Holyoke seem to get made behind closed doors, as Councilor Rivera has said. We came into these chambers, only a week ago to find that there was a data center proposal moving forward that we knew nothing about, that had apparently been discussed behind the scenes for ages. If I, and it wasn't just me, it was every person who signed off on this order, had not filed it back in January, there would be nothing stopping that data center right now. They would be free to go, they would have a right to do whatever they wanted, there would be no regulations to stop them. We need not to have that kind of behind-the-scenes development happen again. I don't say that we shouldn't have an ad hoc committee. I do say that we ought to attempt to refine this language between now and the next city council meeting, where we'll have to move on something, to make it clear that the advisory committee, whoever they are, has the authority to investigate, the authority to make recommendations, but by no means the authority to, or the exclusive authority, to bind the council when it makes the final decision about this. So, one of the things I wanted to check in with Council Solicitor Bissonnette, someday I will get that right, sorry, is to ensure my understanding that we can work on this language and introduce modifications before Tuesday night and still be able to consider them if necessary. So, do we have to write anything to write on the floor tonight, or can we be sure of being able to do it on Tuesday if we have to?
Are you talking about offering amendments on the floor?
Yeah.
For the council meeting? Yeah, that's permissible.
Okay.
Again, the members amended, I want to remind you, this is zoning. So state law applies, 2/3 of the full council would be required to pass the zoning ordinance change.
Okay, and how many votes to amend a zoning proposal? Also 9?
Majority. Amendments are a majority. Final
Okay.
vote, thirds.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So in theory, just to get this out there, in theory, we could pass the new version tonight and revert to the old one on the floor.
Yes, you could offer that as a substitute.
Okay, so those are really our options, and with that, I will yield to my colleague and president.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I wanted to say a few things because, over the past week, I have had conversations with many of you. I've heard, as Councilor Rivera pointed out, many of you have emailed me and us, and I'm glad. And I know that you're eager to weigh in on this issue, and you will have that opportunity. I need everyone to understand that I have literally been spending my entire day, every day working on this for the last week, and it's not a backroom deal that I'm trying to get to happen. It's so that this will actually pass, so that we can have 9 votes to pass. As president, my job is to bring as many people to the middle as possible. And I understand that that means people may walk away with things they don't necessarily want. Okay, so the chair of the ordinance committee and myself, we talked to the law department about whether or not we could have a public hearing tonight. And the reality was they expressed very legitimate concerns that holding a public hearing tonight would have created procedural issues. There could have been violations of open meeting law. It would have delayed our ability to take action and possible legal challenges that would have literally jeopardized exactly why you're all here. So the reason why you're not speaking tonight is not because of a big plan to stifle you from speaking. In fact, what I actually, Madam Chair and I have decided, we did file an order for the next council meeting to create an ad hoc committee. It's not really gonna be an ad hoc committee because it's gonna be bound by ordinance, which means that the meetings have to be public. There has to be minutes. Everything has to be done in the public eye. I wish, in hindsight, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect politician. I am a politician. We're all politicians here. I hate to break it to you. And I'm not a perfect one. I wish that it worked out with my schedule. That first meeting that we had, I really wish it worked out. I couldn't be there. I couldn't make it to the second meeting. I naively thought there was going to be another meeting. So I don't love that this was taken out of the jacket in the last hour of the meeting, the last 5 minutes of a very long ordinance committee meeting. I went to bed at 9:15. I hate to admit it. I could only hear so much about the DPW. I love them. It was a long meeting. This item was not on the agenda. Would I have stayed up all night to be part of that discussion? Yes, because the language that was sent to us at 4 p.m., right before that ordinance committee meeting happened, I was not totally comfortable with it. People had brought up during subcommittee meetings that there were concerns around the computing center. What does this mean for them? What does it mean for Holyoke Medical Center, who has an existing data center for their own uses? That's not why they function. But those concerns, to me, did not seem addressed, and for me, that was really part of the reason why I wanted it to get sent back to committee, because here's the thing. If this did not pass last Tuesday night, when a zoning change doesn't pass, that's 2 years that you get to vote on it again. I didn't want to see that happen. So I think it's important that people understand the process And it's not ideal. I wish that I was more vocal back in February. I really do. But then again, that would have meant me calling people in the background. So I don't know if that's acceptable or not. But my goal remains unchanged. And I hope that that's what can happen tonight, that we are able to move forward with language that is strong in preventing new large-scale data center development. I get it. We need something that's legally defensible and does not unintentionally impact existing institutions that are already operating data infrastructure in our city. So hopefully we can get to that point tonight. And because of the fact that we are going to take this extra step, which should have been done in the first place, to be honest, it should have been done in the first place. And back in January, there was language to look at from other municipalities. Lowell has a moratorium. I looked it up, I read through it, I sent it over to the legal department. If that means that I was doing something behind the scenes, I guess I apologize. I knew that this was time sensitive, and I knew that you all wanted an answer. And in order to do that, I and the council, the committee chair, and our law department worked really hard to provide something that as many people as possible can get behind. Because you need 9 votes to pass a zone change. That's a reality. So I understand the concerns that the difference between a ban and a moratorium, I get that. But I also think that we owe it to ourselves and our city and all of you. You guys weren't here during the first 2 public hearings. And that's not your fault, that's not our fault, but you weren't here. So clearly we didn't allow enough time, or clearly we didn't do our jobs getting the word out to you all. I take ownership of that. Absolutely, you should have known. I don't know. The computing center should have been part of this discussion. The gas and electric should have been part of this discussion. And I, as president, I'll take responsibility for that. I will. So I just want to be clear that I wasn't initiating this process at the last meeting to guarantee any sort of outcome. I just felt like it deserved a little more time. This is a really important thing that we're discussing, and it deserves time, and we also deserve to protect our city. And my job, at the end of the day, my colleagues voted me, whether or not they wanted to, they voted me for president. And so that's my job. Bring people to the middle as much as I can, and hopefully move things forward. And I do genuinely appreciate all of you being here this evening.
I have Councilor Talheimer and then Councilor Rivera.
All right, thank you. I appreciate all these points. What I'm hearing overwhelmingly from the public is they want a ban. They don't want a moratorium, they want a ban. They do not want new data centers here in the city. And that feels pretty straightforward. Councilor Panich had suggested possibly adopting this and sending it in and then amending at City Council next week. Why couldn't we do the inverse? Why couldn't we pass the ban now and then revisit it on the floor on Tuesday? I do think this is something that warrants more discussion. I do think it warrants much more public involvement. I think some of the other things that we've been working on in the city overshadowed this. One of our public meetings was on the 14th, and there were almost as many people here, but speaking about a different thing, and then folks left. And that is difficult because in the absence of a newspaper, in the absence of a group of people keeping track of these things, they are public, they are published on the website. We all, speaking of, I mean, I like the idea of coming to the middle, but we need to come to the middle together and do this. We didn't have to get to this crisis point if all of these different pieces had been working together. And I do feel like I've been talking about this for months because we've been talking about it for months, but again, it's hard to keep up with stuff. Meetings are long. I mean, that was like a 4-hour ordinance meeting, no joke. So I would love to see the inverse, actually. I would love us to see if we can move a ban forward tonight, and then this gives us enough time to think on it, look at possibilities, talk about different stuff, and revisit it on Tuesday when we have the opportunity for public comment. And that's where I'm landing on this. Overwhelmingly, what I'm hearing from the public over and over, many emails, phone calls, all kinds of interactions, ban. The word is ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
I guess for me, again, I'm different. I didn't run my election to meet in the middle. My election has always been radical. I told people I was a felon. I told people I went to prison. I told people how I feel. And anybody that has done research on me and has looked me up, you know I'm gonna wear my feelings on my sleeve, and I'm gonna stand where I stand regardless. It doesn't matter who comes forward or what negotiations come about or whatever new information. If it makes sense, what I'm saying makes sense is not CENTS, I mean sense, SENSE, to the people and to the people. The main reason why I ran to represent, which was Ward 1, to be the first at-large city councilor that comes from that neighborhood. Maybe that's not true, but I would say the first Latino one in a long time. Me and Jose were the first Latino at-large city councils in 20, 30 years. And right now, I think I'm the only Latino at-large city councilor, and it's very hard to win at-large in this city as a Latino, just so people know. So my representation here isn't just about a data center. It's where it's at, too. That's the next thing to me. That's why I'm for the ban, because ultimately, everything goes in the downtown area, and it's not fair to them at the end of the day because they live in an industrial, quote-unquote, area, zoning, or whatever it is, that was designed about 100 years ago or so. But at the end of the day, the people that live down there have no control, no power with regards to having the things that are in their neighborhoods on a daily basis. And I'm in the neighborhood on a regular basis, because you can ask. in the neighborhoods, if you go out there into the neighborhoods, not the outskirts, the actual neighborhoods, when you go in there and they're asking questions as to what's happening and why is all these things happening, I always tell them, come to city council and you'll find out. But that's a whole nother argument, a whole nother discussion. The reason why I was elected was this. If you don't agree with me, don't agree with me, it's cool. Don't elect me again, that's fine. I have no issue with that. This has actually been more of a headache this season, I have to admit. But the reality is, I'm here to represent people that are afraid to come forward, that don't feel like they can be heard at the council, or don't feel like they have the gall to come to the front of the microphone and say what needs to be said. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that and to actually voice on this, and kind of why I was upset that this never came back to committee, because the committee is the one that's supposed to opine on this, and why I said this kind of felt like backdoor behind the scenes. I fully get that some people believe that that's our job, but I also believe it's our job to do that work in the public eye too at the same time, and it's very hard to teeter that line. I fully understand that and get things done, but that's part of this process. I think that's the nature of the beast. I don't know, I guess I'll digress, whatever.
Thank you. I want to name a few things. Jeffrey, would you mind sharing that language? And then I'm going to also have Councilor Bacon speak, and then also Councilor Panich. But first, I want to share the language that Reverend Belletti had mentioned.
Madam Chair, you put me on that list?
Absolutely, sir. All right. So you have two documents in front of you. You have the original one that was sent back to us from council, and then you have the one that's updated with, I think, 2 changes that really do need to be made regardless of what the committee decides. And then you have the moratorium language in that one as well. So you have options in front of you. I want to name that if the committee decides to move forward with the original order back to council, as a members, just as a piece of clarity, I would highly suggest that we add back in the language that redefines warehouse and strikes through that language that allows it currently for all warehouses. And I also think that it would be important to add in section 4. The reason why section 4 is added here is because one of the things that had come out of council was the concern that it was not simply enough to assume that they were a static, fully grandfathered in entity, that it needed to be clarified and named in the ordinance, because otherwise anytime they pulled permit to do work or upgrade some part of the facility, they were immediately banned. And so it needed to be clarified and made clear. And I think that this language here does that. So I just want to name that for the committee members as you're looking at these options in front of you. Those are 2 aspects that I think should be in whatever it is that we send to council tonight. Okay, I also wanted to name on the screen, I have it projected. This is the order that Reverend Belletti and I had co-planned that we are sending to council, which is order that the city council president establish by ordinance a committee to expire/sunset by June 30th, 2027, to study and provide an analysis on the potential impacts of commercial data center development in Holyoke, including electrical demand, water consumption, environmental impact, tax revenue, economic development opportunities, zoning considerations, public safety concerns, and best practices adopted by other municipalities, and to make recommendations to the city council regarding potential zoning and permitting requirements. And it says, a draft of who would be on the committee. So a member from Holyoke Gas and Electric, someone from Holyoke Waterworks, or a member of the Water Commission, a member from the Computing Center, a member from the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Office of Planning and Development, a community member, and a member of City Council. With the idea being that this group would meet and would do Holyoke-specific research around what exactly the impacts would be, and then would report back to council. Based on that, we could then draft an ordinance that either bans everything by right out of every single zone, or maybe there are some smaller uses that make sense to permit. Maybe there's, a data center that is attached to a medical center that is 1 megawatt that makes sense to permit. So I think that there may be some potential uses that may make sense. And the question is, we can't just decide what those are. It has to be based on research, and it has to be based on the information that is specific to Holyoke. And so wanting to form that committee. So I'm showing this now so that, you heard Councilor Reverend Belletti mention the idea of this committee. I wanted to make sure that you had the language in front of you so you could see it. It will come in front of council on Tuesday for your consideration. And so I wanted to make sure that you had this in front of you. The committee itself, as it's formed, it doesn't have any capacity to make any decisions. This is, it would be a public body that would have to keep minutes, would have to follow up a meeting law, and then report back to council, and then the planning board and the ordinance committee does its work to address whatever zoning changes it would want to make or not. So I just want to share that to you. All right, I have Councilor Bacon, Councilor Panich, and then Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to put a few facts out. So it's been stated that when we had the public hearing, we should have heard from HG&E, we should have heard from planning, we should have heard from these other groups, and I agree with that. But because we did not hear from them before we were going to discuss this or debate it or whatever recommendation we would make, I have had communications with both of them. As late as today, I have been informed that there is no current proposal for a data center in front of planning or with the HG&E at this time. I was informed that there have been inquiries. There have been no proposals put forth. I think it's important to know that the media, when it comes out with certain articles and even television news, is not always knowing what is going on within the departments unless they reach out and ask. So that's what I did. I think it's important for us to be dealing with facts. Now, in terms of process, I agree with the people who've objected in the first place that we got a legal form at 4 o'clock and it came up, taken out, not on the agenda, and put forth to City Council. I've said this in another venue. In my view, we're looking at a 41 zone change proposal that happened in the back room. I don't like any politics in the back room. I want them all in the public. Now and some people agree with me and some people vehemently disagree with me, but I have always believed that process matters and we are to do our business in public for the public. And I will stand on that whether I'm voting yes or no. I will tell you that tonight, I got this tonight after I sat down at the table. Now, some people told you they had it for an hour and a half. I had it never until sitting at this table. I will not vote for this tonight, just like I didn't vote for the other thing the other night. We need information to make informed votes. We are your representatives. If you are being represented by fear and assumptions and comparing things that are not comparable, that's not to your interest. We owe you to get information to the best we can and provide you with accurate information. Interestingly, we have had for over a decade a high-performance computer center here in Holyoke. Some of you have attended meetings at that center. And so my point being that we have a case study that we can look at in real time as to what effects it has had on our city. We have departments that come and weigh in on it. And any project that comes into the city should be vetted the same way that one was. Now, for the people who say we have zero protection, my argument to that is if we had zero protection, we would already have 2 or 3 or 4 of these data centers. But when these people have come in to our HG&E wanting to hook up into our power grid and wanting to add huge projects into our city, HG&E declines them. They're here to serve the public. They're taking care of their customers. And I have been informed by them that they've been approached on 2 or 3 different occasions long before this year relative to big data people. I don't know all the details, but they were big and the city couldn't accommodate them and HG&E said no, as they should have. And as I believe they would continue to do if that was the case. So I think it's important for us to step back, consider information before we are naming a crisis that I can't see in real time. So the other point I would make with the order that's been shared with us that will be filed, I guess, tomorrow by certain counselors is we've been talking about this, had public hearings since February. This order could have been filed in February, March, April, May, June. I mean, there was nothing stopping an order being filed to create an ordinance along these lines. It's not a crisis. It doesn't need to be framed as a crisis. And we can do our work and we have plenty of time to do it. So I just think it's important to lower the temperature, keep the dialogue going, and get to a place where we're all having a real conversation and can come to a good solution for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Panich?
Thank you very much. I need to address a couple of points that Councilor Reagan just made. The first is we don't have a bunch of proposals before us precisely because this incident order was filed in January. The way the zoning law works, and you can check this with your own reading of MGL 40A Section 5, you can ask our city solicitor about it. You have, as a developer, a right to any uses that are available under our zoning law once you file a plan indicating that you intend to move forward with one of those uses. The exception to that is if the city has filed an order beginning the 40A process of changing a zone before you have filed any kind of plan indicating that you intend to go forward with a certain use. You have noticed that the city is considering a zoning change and may change your zoning out from under you so that it's no longer available. And at that point, the city is protected for as long as it follows the 40A state process meticulously. This is what our city solicitor and our ordinance chair and our city council president are attempting to preserve by, among other things, not doing public comment tonight. But it is that we filed an order. And some of us tried to move it forward as quickly as possible, but we did file in January, now it's June. 40A also requires that you follow certain deadlines. If we do not follow the deadlines here, if we agree with Councilor Reagan that all the protection we need is embodied in HG&E and we can just assume that they will take care of us no matter what, this procedure will expire by operation of law and we will be wide open. I know for a fact, because they came in and told us themselves in our first public hearing, that there was at least one would-be data center developer that was stopped by this process, by the fact that notice was filed by 3 days. If we had filed this order 3 days later, we would be looking at a data center proposal that We could not stop. Maybe HG&E could have, but the city had no right from there because it had no structure for evaluating these proposals to do anything about it. This is the protection that virtually everyone here is attempting to maintain. The best way forward may be to do the 2-year moratorium now, because it will not preclude our moving later to make that more permanent. The best way forward now may be a ban, and I would love to hear Solicitor Bissonnette's analysis of what risks we would undertake by trying to pass a ban. The big risk that I see, frankly, is getting to 9 votes, which we need. If we do not get those 9 votes, the city is wide open, and we are back to, well, let's just outsource this to HG&E. I love HG&E, but I don't know how many people in this room or who are listening now are prepared to make HG&E the sole protection we have against the problems that other communities have encountered with these that I think it's realistic. It won't help us to file another order in a week, particularly with the council going on vacation, if we don't have something in place to extend this protection now. And I am even now getting requests from people to move to amend to restore the ban. I know how strong people feel about it. I feel that way about it myself. But I do take the warnings about 9 votes to heart. And just, if I may be allowed a personal comment here, I hope that our council president does not think that I am accusing her of maneuvering behind the scenes. That's not what I intended to comment on at all. I don't think that she's done it. I don't think that she means to do it or has ever meant to do it. I think that the perception that I'm talking about comes out of things like, to go off topic a little, the way that people didn't understand that Holyoke might be selling property to a developer for a sports complex until it looked like a done deal. We just don't have enough communication in the city. It's not anyone's fault. I know everyone's trying, but this is the perception on the outside, and I think to bring our community together and move forward, we want to do everything we can to at least create the impression as well as the fact that it isn't always the same institutions that are making decisions for Holyoke. And that's where I have the issues with the ad hoc committee. As long as it's clear, and I'm sorry, one other point that I think should be brought forward at this point is in informal conversations with the planning board, they did mention that they felt that this was going to need specific expertise to design appropriate regulations because the science is so complicated. And that is something that I think we ought to keep in mind no matter how we proceed on this. But as long as we are not bound by their recommendations, I'm fine. By all means, bring everybody to the table. And I think that's everything I wanted to get in there.
Thank you, Councilor Panich. Jeffrey, would you mind pulling the language down that we've had enough time to look at it? Thank you. And I want to name that we have been joined online by Councilors Masonette and Jenny Rivera, which means that all councilors are currently either on Zoom or in chambers. Oh, Councilor Greene, you were right, is not online. Sometimes he calls in. All right, Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you. Also, like everybody else, I've had quite a few conversations with the public this week, a lot of emails. What concerns me most, and now I'm hearing some of it from another councilor, is the public and this committee needs to deal with facts. And there's been a lot of disinformation put out there. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to get into something like this, not only is the committee aware, but the public is aware of some absolute facts, and I've done the research on it. So there's been a lot of talk about water usage, all right, number one, okay? In 1996, during the summer peak, the city of Holyoke used between 10 and 11 million gallons of water per day, all right? Last year, at the summer peak, we used 4 million gallons, all right? That's a drop-off of 6 to 7 million gallons of water. This also ties together with other conversations we've had, hard conversations lately, about why our water rate is what it is, all right? Basic Economics 101, high school economics. Anybody knows that when you have a demand that drops off like that and a huge supply, right, that cost per person using it is going to go up, all right? There's no question about that, and we've seen it happen here. It doesn't cost, it's cost more and more and more to deliver less and less water to fewer users, all right? That's a fact. I presented the committee. You have it in front of you. I've highlighted it for you, all right? Well, not that fact. What I've highlighted here is now the use of the current data center, right? And what you'll see here is the peak usage, the recent peak usage for a quarterly billing was 4,497,800 gallons. This is a fraction over 1% of the current usage. And if it was at peak usage, right, it would be less than 1/2 of 1%. This also, Holyoke's reservoirs, despite the fact that the state is under a water ban, this is a statewide water ban, right? It's mostly caused by the eastern portion of the state. Right now, everybody here could go out despite this ban, water their lawns, do whatever they want, and it would have absolutely no effect on our reservoirs. Our reservoirs right now are at 97% of capacity. And when I say our reservoirs are at 97% of capacity, we only use one of the 4 reservoirs. And that reservoir has a capacity of over 1 billion gallons, okay? So any conversations that go to the public and to this committee that bring into the fact that it's going to strain our water supply are pure fiction, all right? So that's...
No,
Order in the chambers,
folks,
public.
I have not.
Order in the come and please put that sign
Megan,
down.
I got it. Thank you.
Yes.
if
I have
yeah, I'm
not
fine if
controlled the
people
public
can't
so
handle-
far, but we do need to manage the quorum. Thank you.
All right, so anybody wants, they can research. Those are the facts. If people don't want to accept the facts, I'm just here to present them. I do have my reservations about it, but I'll get to it. As far as the electric grid, Holyoke already exports off our green energy production out on the grid. About 40% of our production goes out on the grid. It goes out on the grid at 4 cents a kilowatt. 4 cents, okay? What's your rate in your house? Think about that. Now, as far as our existing data center, it uses none of the energy that is produced here in Holyoke are in fact used, all right? That's all going out. We have to guarantee to any user, existing ones or new ones, that we can provide electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We cannot provide that guarantee. Therefore, for the existing data centers and any new ones that come in, we purchase off the grid at a higher rate and mark that up and then charge a transmission fee. The current data center does have a very, very, very favorable rate, and Holyoke Gas and Electric has already told numerous others that want to come to town they will not get that rate, they will not get close to that rate, and that has already kept some of them at bay. This is why I take exception with any other counselor that thinks we do not have good stewards or cannot trust Holyoke Gas and Electric. As far as other communities that can't trust their electrical suppliers, I take great exception to comparing Holyoke Gas and Electric, its board of directors, or its managers, and comparing them with National Grid, Eversource, or other large utilities like that. So that's as far as the electricity goes. It would not be a drain on our system. It would actually, in fact, lower the overall residential and commercial bills of everyone in the city to have another customer, right? So we need to eliminate those two from the discussion. What does concern me is the fact that, no, they don't bring a lot of jobs to the city. That's number one. Number two is PFAS. What kind of a system are they going to have? What is going out in the wastewater, right? We already, your household, your dishwasher, and every user in Holyoke is currently discharging PFAS into the system. Does that mean we should allow another one in? No, but it's all part of a much larger discussion and a much larger problem, which we are already discussing and taking action on in the city in our new long-term sewer contract. So the public should be aware of that also. We are aware of it, we are taking action, and it's a much bigger problem than just one new business coming to town. I think that's all I want to say for right now.
Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. Councilor Purcell?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to just do a where, what, and why. Where they want to put it is very important because it's in a low-income neighborhood. If this isn't a violation of environmental justice, nothing is. I'm old enough to remember the Mountown coal plant, and the mantra there was all the tax money that was coming in from the Mountown coal plant. And they're right, they were paying money, but they were killing us while they were doing it. With filthy coal, and they were saying it was clean coal. There's no such thing as clean coal. It was a lie then, and it's a lie now. What does it do? It sucks our water, our clean water, because in order to make those servers work, it has to be clean water, otherwise those servers will rust. So they're gonna take clean water, and they're gonna use it for their small, quote, small data center that uses as much power as 15,000 homes. How many homes do we have in Holyoke? 15,000 homes, that's double what we got now. They're not using any energy. If that isn't using more energy, you just double the energy. What's a lie and what's a lie and what's not a lie? That's all I have for that. And don't get me wrong, I love Holyoke Gas and Electric because we have a hydroelectric dam and we have a lot of solar arrays in the city. That's green energy. We have been a green community since 2010. I want us to be fully carbon neutral for our energy needs. This will not get us there.
Thank you. Councilor Thalheimer?
The medical center data and the Holyoke Hospital information about them being data centers is correct. They're not lying. They are small data centers. So why should we add a humongous one like that to the problem? Even if you say they're not a problem, you're doubling whatever it is. So you're compounding whatever people think is wrong. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So as far as I'm concerned, And in the last meeting we had, a councilor said a ban is a harsh word. A ban is being used because the data centers are bad. And as a great judge says, caso cerrado. Gracias.
Thank you. We have Councilor Talheimer and then Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo what my colleague, Councilor Purcell, has said, and I'll double back to that in a minute, but I have some technical questions and points. One of the things in here that we're talking about, because earlier we had discussed when we send this back, including the part about striking the language on warehouses, and Section 4 about the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center, with that permitted use up to 12 megawatts. Do we know what it's operating at currently in terms of megawatts?
I can too. So,
Well, I mean, this is part of the discussion, and even if we knew, maybe
Yeah.
the public doesn't know.
Again,
But,
7 megawatts.
okay, so currently it's operating at 7 megawatts. It would go up to 12, potentially up to 12 megawatts.
so the reason why is because in conversations with the computing center, when they initially came to our city, it was under a certain plan for them to, develop in phases. They're a nonprofit that does research for a consortium of universities, and they had already, put transformer pads and ductwork underneath the ground. Like, you may not be able to see the work that is there, but it's already there. And so one of the things that was interesting in the conversation in council on Tuesday was making clear what a pre-existing use is, and it not being entirely clear for an entity that already has ordered parts for the next step in something that they were very upfront with the city that they were doing. And so in conversations, it felt like it was important for us to name that, but also to name it at, this was what feels reasonable, versus allowing it with no cap at all.
Excellent.
Without naming 12 megawatts, there's no cap at all.
No, I totally understand that. I have a few more points related to that, but you have just laid the groundwork for the next part that I wanted to mention, is that the Massachusetts Green High Performance Computing Center, I always get it wrong, it's out of order, I just focus on green, is very different from a freestanding data center that's, doing AI and all of that business. Like, they are apples and oranges. And there are environmental protections built in to that existing structure and that existing business. Those are not things that we have in place with any incoming other data center. And I think that's really important to name. Sort of adjacent to this, thinking about the ad hoc committee, a single resident versus possibly 3 residents might make a real difference in terms of impact, throwing that out there. Thinking about the concept of principal use, where something like Holyoke Medical Center may add a server room. That server room is not the principal use of Holyoke Medical Center.
Correct.
Versus a data center, which is a freestanding structure operating at 15, 20 megawatts? Way beyond.
There's no megawatt that's tied to it. But
Right.
the difference is naming something that may be a computing center that's tied to an existing industry and building is different from something that is a standalone entity, largely focused on generative AI.
Yes, that is exactly what I was going for. Thank you. And in conclusion, to sort of wrap up, we keep talking about the money element, but I think we need to talk about the human element. Like, this is an impactful industry. Like, as someone who personally is very sensitive to noise and that kind of infrastructure, and thinking about, I have residents in my ward who are already dealing with the impacts of the noise pollution from HVAC systems from the hospital and the school that overlap in the neighborhood. Data centers are significantly worse. There is a low hum that is constant and unyielding that dramatically impacts the quality of life for people not just in the area, but in surrounding communities. This is not something that's just going to affect Holyoke. This is going to affect Chicopee. This is going to affect South Hadley. This is going to have impacts beyond our city. And so it's important to think about, industry, money, this kind of thing, but let's not lose sight of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take my time because I don't want to say anything that's going to jeopardize, and I want to be thoughtful. So last year, before Councilor Panich was elected, we were having discussion about data centers, and we were concerned then. After she got elected, she had approached me and mentioned that she had plans to file an order to address such. And I was on board, obviously. That is why my name is on that order. That was the first time, last year was the first time where I started paying close attention. And I will be honest, I don't know. There's a lot of information I don't know. Like a counselor already stated, we don't have that much information. There's false information out there, so on and so forth. But here's what I do know. See, I'm a communications major, so I always look under each page, and I consistently pay attention to movement. Now I'm going to lay that down for you, movement. So last year we hear about it. We're gearing up. And all of a sudden now there's interest in Holyoke. And I must state, I'm born and raised in the city, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect it. So here I'm thinking, oh, someone's dangling this money in front of us. And I'm like, I feel like, am I the kid that's supposed to take that candy and go into that van? Like, that's how I see it. It's like, why are you dangling this money? And I love the fact that they say 2 to 3 million, right? So, okay, 2 to 3 million. What's stopping you from going from 2 and then all of a sudden 3? It's weird. It's to entice you, right? They're looking at our finances. They're looking at our makeup of the city. They're saying, how can we make money? We don't care. They don't live here. So why do they care? They do not live here, folks. They don't live here. Their only stake at the game is to make money. My stake at the game is to save the community, to protect the community. At all costs. At all costs. I don't care what you dangle in front of me. My people come first. Okay? I know, I'm sorry. I'm just focusing. I know, I love you guys. Thank you for coming. We need more of this. So like I was saying, there was movement. And then I found it interesting that the day the order was pulled out of committee, the Mass Live article came out the same day as the meeting, which threw a monkey wrench in the goals and plans of what some of the members of this council had, and threw it right back to committee. Now, that was a movement, and it was caused by what? Not by us. I mean, yes, the motion to send it back to committee was caused by us, but what created us? What made us feel like, oh, maybe we should send it back to committee? I'm going to say this very, very, very straightforward and carefully. At the end of the day, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Because once you take that ship, once you sail, it ain't coming back. We cannot protect ourselves. At the end of the day, there is not a dollar you can put on human life, okay? And to be frank, on Mother Earth, if we're gonna go there, okay? So again, there was a lot of movement, and then there's more. Like, so after it went back to committee, I tell my husband, I'm getting flashbacks of that movie, that Aaron Brockovich. Oh, Aaron Brockovich, that's the name of the movie. I'm getting flashbacks of Aaron Brockovich for some reason. Lo and behold, my husband is my witness. The next day, there's an article about Aaron Brockovich talking about just this damn thing. Same thing about data centers. And one thing she mentioned? She said that what she finds interesting is that data centers are creeping into neighborhoods without even giving you a fair warning. Again, movement, to my statement of movement. That's happening in this city. We weren't aware. And for those who want to talk, see, because I do my homework as well. So for those who want to talk about, Holyoke Gas and Electric is on board. Well, guess what? I spoke to someone from Holyoke Gas and Electric. God is my witness. This is what they said. They didn't even give us a plan. Oh, so the company didn't give you a plan. No, you know what I feel the plan is they're trying to build some kind of trust, some kind of support system to get them to their goal, is to make money. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. It is, don't trust and believe when I tell you that my spidey instincts are tingling like crazy. They've been tingling since last year, and they're off the charts this year. Like, I'm at wit's end. I, too, received 100 emails. Actually, no, you're 200 emails. What? Oh, I'm old school spidey, okay? So anyways, what I'm saying, folks, is that I am 100,000% with you, because I don't want our people to be taken advantage of and to be taken into a van because, hey, we got them candy.
Solicitor Bissonnette, to ask you a question.
Yes,
And then I have Councilor Miletty, Devine, and then Rivera. You had earlier said that one of the reasons why you had, the law department had created a second draft for us to consider a moratorium was also because you were worried that a moratorium would stand, but a ban had a higher chance of being challenged. Can you speak more to that?
The opinion that we read from the Attorney General's office indicated that a moratorium of some duration would be acceptable if it was accompanied by a statement about the reasons for the moratorium. And it crafted out some language that we basically use as a template in this one. The reason is that there were several ideas that had been floated by various members, and what we really tried to do tonight was just give this committee a template to pick and choose, almost like a menu where you take one from this side and from that side. We have no horse in the race. And, well, some people think we just did it to tick off Izzy. That's really not true. So I just wanted to make sure he knows that.
Fair. So just to paraphrase what I think I'm hearing back, it was more about if we were going to move forward with a moratorium, the AG's decision created clarity on the information that would need to be put in place for a moratorium. It didn't necessarily speak to any kind of preemption or grounds for a challenge concerning a ban.
I mean, very clearly, there's been a ruling that on ban, and no community has, or no town, I should say, has enacted a ban that would have to go to the AG's office. As we know, Lowell has done the moratorium, and that seems to be prevalent based on what the ruling has been. I want to point out one other thing. There are really two deadlines that we're working on. The original order filed early this year, the one that's now before your committee, has to be acted on or it will self-destruct 90 days from the public hearing being closed. We believe that to be July 13th. So, in effect, if this vehicle does not go forward in some form, we have no worries whether it's ban or moratorium, gets us to the same place. The lack of anything being done before July 13th then renders that opening. It exists today. I suspect no one really thought that they would look under warehouse to find an exception for a data center. I know I didn't, but that is a loophole that needs to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks very much.
So to be clear, you're saying that we don't have a template of a community who has of yet banned data centers across the state? We don't have
That's
anything
correct.
from the AG's office?
That's correct.
Thank you.
There was one other point that we talked about previously, and my latest understanding is it's unlikely that it will be a state preemption. It does appear that unless it gets attached to a bill very soon, the state ban is likely not going to be taken out this year, and will probably not happen before the legislature prorogues ends its session for the year of July.
Are you worried that if we enact a ban, it will be challenged under any grounds?
Well, there's safer harbor with the moratorium. I believe in municipal integrity in being able to, unless it runs astray and it's been preempted by the state, that the municipality is free to enact a ban or a moratorium, especially on topics that aren't previously covered by zoning. You need to know what you're doing before you do it. The problem here, the thing that scares me more than anything, is the fact that there appears to be something created to allow the current data center to come to Holyoke. That was adding that clause, which for some reason everybody represented to me was a special permit. We found later that it was not. And so now, in 2 of the 3 allowable business districts, warehouses are allowed as a right. And in the 3rd district, by special permit. So, as you can see, that could be a problem in terms of litigation if someone were to challenge it. However, if you do the moratorium, then along with the striking of the language, I think it positions yourself well as a defense against any potential litigation. You arrive at the same place, but at a safer harbor. Would the ban get upheld? My view would be yes, but that's only my view. It hasn't been litigated yet. But I believe in inherent powers if there's no state preemption. Again, it's a subtle distinction, but in this case, I don't think there's much of a difference, except with one, we know where the AG's opinion is at. With the other, it's uncharted.
Thank you. I want to name that this committee approved the language that went to council. We supported 4-1 in a vote, a ban to move forward to council with our recommendation. And my first instinct is to confirm that ban. I do want to name, however, stop, please, let me speak. I do want to name, however, that we are in uncharted territory. We don't have the state providing any leadership to affirm that data centers are banned. And in fact, we have, in many cases, the state encouraging the building of data centers. And we don't have an opinion from the AG's office around what happens if we put a ban in place. I am worried about the city potentially being exposed to litigation. And I say this only from experience because I've seen this happen again and again, where a developer doesn't like something that the city does, and so they can muscle their way in. Because in the end, some of these entities have a lot more funding than we do. And so I will say it's a hard decision to make, but I understand that what they're saying is that the moratorium, they know with the language that we have, would not be able to be contested. Whereas we could see litigation or potentially see issues with a ban. And that may not happen, but it's just what I'm hearing. All right, I have Marisha Ramboletti, Devine, and then Rivera. Councilor Devine.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. And before I go on, one thing you just said, the litigation with a ban, if I could ask City Solicitor Bissonnette, if there was a ban created by the City Council and some company did litigation, what would that do to a ban? Would that just kind of hold it up? I don't know if my question's correct.
It depends on what they were suing. It would probably be a lawsuit in injunction against the city enforcing the ban. If it was based on the current warehouse ordinance, I would see an order asking for a building permit to be issued. And then the process would, if issued, then you go through the whole site plan review. But City of Dangerous does not have any regulations concerning this. It just sort of wanted to find a way, I think, to let the high performance computer center come in. And this is going to be an expedient way to do it. And it opens the door. But will anyone file litigation? It's hard to say. There are some people that are interested. But I don't want to fully echo Councilor Bacon's statements. But if they're not getting a welcome mat from HG&E, they're going to know pretty soon that this is probably not a good place for them.
Okay.
So I think that's where the rubber might meet the road in terms of litigation. If they win and they get an order to build, doesn't mean that HG&E wants to cooperate with us.
Okay.
There's a lot of money that could be charged for some of these companies to come in and get hooked up to municipal systems.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to thank everybody that took the time to either call or email me. I was able to speak to some people. I tried to get back to their emails as fast as possible. There was a lot of emails, and they were all generally nice emails. They were productive. They were informative. There was nothing nasty about them, which I appreciated very much. But I will tell you one thing. There was one threat, not an email, but, and this is what it was. I kid you not, I, quote, will commit crimes and risk arrest to stop this thing if you do not. And the police are aware of it. Apparently the FBI are aware of that. That's a threat to any of us that are in this council or in that arena. So I just wanted to mention that. I like I said, everybody was so nice, so informative. You're here tonight. You have a cause. I get that. I also want to mention that there's no backdoor deals. Trust me on that one. This thing that we were handed to tonight, that was at 6:30 this evening. So it wasn't, you know, it was this evening. And something I kind of agree with, my main concern, and I do want to thank our president, Murphy Ramboletti, and the chair of Ordinance Committee, because I know they've worked hard on this, not to take a side or anything like that. And I do like the idea, to be honest with you, of a moratorium. And Westfield, I found one in Westfield that has a moratorium for a year. And the thing is, with this ad hoc committee, I can tell you, I trust Tessa Murphy Ramboletti. I trust Megan McGrath-Smith. I trust everybody that's looking for the best interest of the city. But what I will mention is that I told you about the threat, and that that was totally unacceptable. But interestingly enough is I didn't receive one call or email from the company that's trying to put this in here. Now, wouldn't you think, I would certainly think, having been around for a long time, that they would have been all over this. They would have been calling us, they would have been emailing us, can we meet with you? They didn't do that, okay? So I'm kind of glad of that. But I will tell you, I like the idea of a moratorium and an ad hoc committee. And I know that this city council, they take those committees serious, and they interview people, and they get people that are really interested in being part of the solution. So I just wanted to thank everybody, and I kind of like that moratorium language, and I think it'll be less, we won't get sued with the ban, is from what I can understand, but the company never even reached out to us. So as far as I'm concerned, they're gone. But that's all I want to say is thank you, and we'll keep plugging along.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan and Councilor Pelheimer.
Thank you, and Attorney Bissonnette, I'd appreciate your weighing in on this, especially if we have a concern about potential lawsuits, which we really don't need to incur. I think our very simple price structuring from HG&E is something that couldn't be challenged in court. I mean, anybody can sue for any reason. I think that's one that would probably get thrown out pretty fast, and we have a very good gatekeeper to give us the time to get this right the first time also, and not risk that type of litigation. All HG&E has to do is, and what they've already done, is told a lot of the new players that have tried to come to town over the last 6 months, and there's been more than this one, you're not going to get the price of our current high-speed computing center. And they've gone away. And just from what I know of business transactions, real estate, what we've seen with, even already with the International Sports Complex, right? In their purchase and sale agreement, they're going to say contingent upon this, contingent upon that, contingent upon this. One of their contingencies is going to be that they get an electric rate that they're not going to get. The deal goes away. So if we're going to do this, let's not push panic buttons, get involved in all kinds of litigation when we've got the right people and the necessary safeguards in place.
Councilor Thalheimer and then Councilor Panich.
I have seen this city council do things previously that open themselves wide open to litigation. Near and dear to me is the lawn sign ordinance, which some of you will remember. The ACLU checks in on a regular basis to make sure that we are still, 5 by 5. But I mention this to say that the threat of litigation has not stopped the city council from doing things in the past. And one of the things that I most value from Councilor Devine that I've learned in working together is this: makers of law, makers of history. We have the opportunity to make history. No other municipality has done this. Nobody else has done it out of fear of litigation. We were not afraid of litigating lawn signs. Why are we afraid of litigating this? We have an opportunity. I think we should take it. Thank you.
Councillor Penich?
The first is, I understand the concern about the warehouse language, which, yes, definitely we want to get rid of that. But my understanding was that the 40A hold, the one where once the city has noticed something and filed it, you can demand as a developer a right to develop under the zoning provisions that were there when the order was put in. Doesn't that protect us from a claim that we should be, from the developer, that they should be allowed to develop as a city? Because we told them that use might be going away.
We asked that question yesterday at the city planner, and he indicated that that was not solved. And then we, based on the anecdotal evidence, the three of us, we decided to research further. And it seems pretty clear that and this is for special permits, by the way. These special permits, I think, get confused with zone changes on this point quite a bit. The zoning ordinance change takes effect upon by the council signature by the mayor. That's the effective date. And I'd be happy to be corrected on that because, as you said, I'd long thought that the filing date really did control the effective date. But we were able to find out to substantiate that, and the planner confirmed that that was just not applicable to zone ordinances. So,
interesting, because I would have thought this plain language of 40A. But, yeah. And the other was, if we decide to go for the ban rather than the moratorium, would added language indicating, which is perfectly true, that our purpose is to not restrict development, but to protect the health and safety of the community from these known dangers of data centers, strengthen our litigation position?
yeah, I think that's the same language that we would be looking at in terms of the justification for either. I think if you want to add further buttressing for the ban on it, then I would add as much as possible to the language supporting the buttressing for the ban is needed. And part of that would be the absence of real knowledge as to what the end result of licensing for allowing these data centers beyond a certain capacity would result in.
Okay, thank you. Because that indicates a risk that I have thought was completely off the table, which does argue in favor of perhaps going the moratorium for the sake of safety and then taking advantage of the fact that we are a legislative body and we can legislate on the fly if we have to.
And there's nothing to prevent a ban from being enacted after the study.
Yeah.
I mean, the results could be, look, we don't care what anybody else is going to do. Holyoke says no. And that's a defensible position in my view. But it seems, I'm afraid the court might find it premature.
Yeah, well, in my aim, as I'm sure that you can tell, and I hope everybody listening to this can tell, is giving us the most airtight protection we can possibly have. And, we move forward from there.
Part of our job is to try to avoid the city getting, and its agencies from getting sued, and the other part is defending the cities if in fact, well, we should get sued. But, prevention is really better than the cure sometimes, and that may be a situation we're faced with here.
Yeah, well, I would rather not get sued, but my concern here is not so much we'll get sued as whether we might lose if we got sued. And if there is a substantial risk of our losing, that makes a difference.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera?
Yes, I real quick, I just wanted to clarify with regards to backdoor deals or stuff. Like, that's not the intention of what I was saying. What I'm saying is when I request information, I don't get the information. So I have a perfect example here of where I requested information around megawattage for the mass computing center, and I was told, I can read it right here, where it says, HG&E cannot provide customer information without approval from the customer. But yet, for some reason, the information is out there, right? And others have gotten the same information.
I didn't get it from HG&E.
I'm not saying you did.
I didn't get anything.
I'm not saying you did, but I know people did. So ultimately, that's my point. That's the point that I'm speaking to. When it comes to certain things, it doesn't get communicated to me, and it's expected that I'm supposed to follow suit. And I don't play that game, I guess, if that makes sense to some, right? I think there's another point where this is the first I've heard that there are other smaller data centers in the city. Like, how many people in the public knew that ahead of time before this now? I don't think anyone knew that. So, for me, it's, again, there's points of information that have not been brought forward until now because of what's at the table or what's come forward. So, for me, it's not that anyone's hiding information or doing all that. It's just, how is it being communicated I guess to us, because I don't get it till last second or right when I'm about to sit on the table. I guess like it just doesn't speak to what the community is looking for when we are trying to represent them at the end of the day. Because for me, I can't do my job if I don't know what the wattage is. Because I literally wrote a whole email requesting some of this information. I got some, I didn't get it all. I get it, makes sense, I didn't question it. But at the end of the day, if the people are not getting the information and I'm not getting the information, then how can it make it so that I can make a decision that makes sense? Unless they want me to make a decision like we're gonna do now, right? In a sense where I just got some of this language now. I had no clue about a lot of this stuff that came forward in this new language. Not to say that I intentionally want to move forward and try to have the city, put the city in jeopardy of getting sued. But I would say that the city, as Councilor Tolmeyer mentioned, the city has been sued multiple occasions. And in my opinion, defending the right of what the people's voice is, it makes sense to take that risk, right? Only because I get mean stares by some people, like, please. Like, I get it, because I've been here for 4 years now, and it really bothers some councilors, like, when we do that. Like, it really bothers them. So out of respect for them, I guess I would ask that when I say something, and that's a little late to say that, but like, but yeah, we can do that. But I guess for me, it's like, ultimately, it's, there's information, and with regards to the lawsuits, people have been sued for various things. I'm not gonna say it out there because I don't wanna trash my city, but at the end of the day, again, like I said, fighting for community voice kind of makes sense to take the initiative. And if the Attorney General's office wants to, I don't know, everyone has to run an election again. Like, we all have to run an election, and we all have to go ahead and run again. Whoever votes however they want to vote, that's cool. There's accountability later on. That's where it's at. It's where like, the reality is you stand where you stand or you don't. And I'm going to tell you I stand where I stand. Thank you.
I see a couple more hands. I just want to name that I would like to move to a motion in the near future, and I'd like to be able to move to the maker of the order to ask that. I'm seeing a few hands. Do we want to continue this conversation?
If you don't mind, all I wanted to say to Mr. Rivera, who's no longer in his chair, is I can only speak for myself. I don't do things to looking at the next election. I never have, and I never will. And I was insulted by that.
Thank you. Councilor Purcell, Councilor
I
Sullivan.
promise I'll be very quick.
Thank you.
So as far as litigation is concerned, one of the things while I was doing the research about data centers was, what if we have a drought? We're gonna be pitted against a 23 megawatt or whatever size it is place, fighting us over our water. Water is life, that's how we live. Are we gonna be in litigation with a giant conglomerate over our water that we drink so they can keep their servers cool? That's litigation also, so that's another reason. Bam, thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Once again, number one, I'm trying to present this committee with facts. All right? I do not fear litigation. And for people on this committee to sit here and say that I'm fearing, I try to avoid litigation. There's a huge difference there. That's number one. Number two, once again, I'm going to say, as far as water supply in the city, and here I do hear it again, all right? This and any other data center is no threat to the drinking water supply in Holyoke at all whatsoever. That is one clear fact. There are a lot of other threats, there are a lot of other possibilities, but that is not one of them.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the maker of the order. Councilor Panich, this is your order. What's your motion?
This is difficult because ideally I would do a little bit of tweaking of some of the language on the fly. I do not feel able to do that at, 2 in the morning my time? So, I would hope that, as Councilor Bissett has pointed out, I can offer some amendments between now and when this comes up on Tuesday. I hope that it does come up on Tuesday. I am swayed by the threat that I had not been aware of previously, and that City Solicitor Bissett has just made me aware of. I don't have, none of us have, because this just happened a few hours ago that we learned this. I would love to put some time into researching where we stand now with the hold on any applicants coming forward for these facilities. But given all of that, my ideal scenario, I think, is if I ask for a motion to pass this, or recommend it to the City Council basically as amended, but also kind of hope that somebody will wish to file a minority report with the original language, so that we can vote when the time comes.
Yep.
So I suppose my motion is to pass essentially the Law Department's new draft with the understanding that some tweaking of the language will happen between now and Tuesday night most likely, and with the recommendation that we adopt it effectively immediately to make sure that we are safe for the next 2 years and keep moving to ensure our safety and possibly a permanent ban from there.
The motion is to pass the amended language that was read into the record earlier and to move it to council with our recommendation. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion.
Well, if it's not the will of the committee to do it, I'm good with that.
Are we in discussion?
Yeah, we're in discussion. Councilor Tolliver.
I am still leaning toward a ban.
Okay.
That's where I'm at on this. This is what the public tells me that they want. This is the vote that I'm hearing. I very much value Councilor Panich's work on this, and I honor and respect what she is saying in regards to the threat of litigation, but I'm still at ban. Thank you.
Councilor Tessa Murphy-Omeletti?
So just to get this super clear, if the 2-year ban doesn't pass and we go back to the beginning, and we go back to what happened at the last meeting, and that vote doesn't pass, then there's nothing, right? And then we can't vote on that for 2 years. I actually really want the law department to confirm with me because I don't know if, I want to make sure I understand that correctly.
Actually, after checking that, there's an exception to that rule, the 2-year rule. If the order that was referred to the planning board comes back with a favorable recommendation, which happened in this case, then the 2-year rule does not apply and it can come back up within the time.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, thank you. So, but that would mean, essentially though, that that night, as of Tuesday night, there's nothing protecting us, right? We would have to file another order again. I just want to make this super clear.
If it does not pass and is not referred back to committee, yes, that would be the city unprotected.
And if it does not pass and it gets referred back to committee, which a lot of things, that's what happens, then we would need to continue to discuss it in ordinance, and then we have our summer recess. So what happens in the meantime then, when there isn't anything?
The deadline for action would be July 13th.
Yep.
If action is not taken by then, it would become a stale order.
Okay, so essentially we would have to have a special meeting if we were gonna do this.
I would think so.
Awesome, thanks.
Councilor McGrath, if you don't mind.
Councilor Devine?
All I want to say is that Councilor Panich is the one that we should be listening to, because normally you would have thought all this time and all the work she's put into this that she would be looking for a ban. She's not doing that. She's looking to do a moratorium based on the language that we were all given tonight. So we need to listen to her. She's been the one that's kind of leading the whole thing, and now she has taken the language that was given tonight for a moratorium and asked for it. So I would certainly hope somebody on the committee would have seconded that, but it's my opinion.
Councilor Rivera?
If I may, so I think for me is I respect all the stuff that Councilor Panich has done and the effort she's put into this. Doesn't mean I have to vote the same way she votes. I appreciate, and she's done a lot of research when it comes to this, but I stated before, I didn't run to do that. You know what I mean? I think for me, it's representing what the people want, and the reality is I've never gotten, other than the time that I called it that OUI and I got a bunch of hate mail for about a good 30, 60 days, I've never got as much email as I got now. So for me is I gotta stand where I stand on this one. And my apologies to you, Mimi, if it's in conflict with what you're trying to accomplish, but the reality is that the people have spoken when it comes to me, in my opinion, so that's why I stand where I stand.
Councilor Panich?
Yeah, fear not, I do not feel attacked or unappreciated, although I do appreciate those kind words from Councilor Devine. My concern here, because my part is, I think I've made it very clear, with the ban. I have advocated for it for months. I have argued intensively that it provides the city with more protection than a moratorium ever can. My fear, frankly, is can the ban attract 9 votes on Tuesday? If it can't, and if we cannot then immediately swap it out for a moratorium, which we may be able to do if both go to the council with a report from this committee, and Solicitor Bissonnette can confirm or deny, then I would assume that if the ban failed, we could also vote on a moratorium, and perhaps that would not. But you know, I have not spoken to each and every one of my fellow council members. For one thing, I'm 6 time zones away, and for another, I do worry about the open meetings law. But you know, I appreciate Councilor Murphy-Rondaletti's point, and if there are 9 votes for one and there aren't 9 votes for the other, that is genuinely my only concern. And I don't know whether anyone on the ordinance committee besides me is worried about that, but I am. And that's really all I have to say about this. You know that I would rather have some ban. Everybody in chambers knows it.
Yes.
But no, we don't want to pass nothing. That is the nightmare scenario.
Councilor Anderson Burgos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh. Everyone that knows me, I'm like a middle person. I try to bring people together, but through the chair, to Attorney Bissonnette, this question's to you.
Yes, sir.
If we pass a moratorium of 2 years, correct me if I'm wrong, couldn't we, during the process of those 2 years, whether it's halfway through or whatever, said 2 years, couldn't we, we're legislators, couldn't we, before those 2 years are up, create another safeguard if we're still not ready? Right? We could do that, right? And then potentially even, if things start unfolding, create a final ban. Am I right?
Yes.
then for the love of God,
In this,
no,
in this
you've answered my
situation-
question. You've answered my question. Thank you. Thank you so much. So for the love of God, this body needs. I'm not one to play with fire. Okay? I'd rather be safe than sorry. This is a better approach. This gives us leeway. We are the legislative body, and as my partner here mentioned, we are the makers of lawmakers of history. We do not want to be playing games right now. You know, I know we're not playing games. We're trying to stick to what the people want, and so do I, for crying out loud. But I also don't want to get burnt to the process. We have the time. 2 years is more than adequate. 2 years is more than adequate. We can sit down. That's enough time for us to figure out what is before us. And then we can sit around and watch what's happening to other communities that are saying, hey, sure, come in. Right? This gives us time. So I urge you, please take this path. Thank you.
Solicitor Bissonnette, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, as you look at the latest draft, there are provisions for the pre-existing data center as well as a 2-year time period. It is possible to swap out the moratorium period and impose the ban.
Yep.
But you can do it either way. I think you should probably consider whether you want to have the other provisions in there as well, including the committee to do the study. You know, if one or the other will pass, and I think you should have the opportunity to at least discuss whether you want to keep the second and third parts of this and then enact a ban or moratorium. At least you'll have some options.
Thank you. Based on that advice, I'd like to propose an amendment to the order that we have on the floor, which is to move the amended language to council with our recommendation, but also send along, as part of the minority report, the language that we sent last time to council, along with the provisions around striking the definition out of warehouse and also adding section 4. That's the one that creates the provision for the commuting center. Is there a second?
Could you repeat it one more time?
What I'm suggesting is that when we move to council, that we are approving or we're recommending that they move the moratorium language forward, but also that we're sending this language amended with the strike through from the warehouses and adding section 4. So we're adding these sections to the ban.
I'll second it for discussion. I'm in favor of including the change of the warehouse definition and the change to section 4. How can we build something in here that says, if we end up passing this moratorium, we can also pass a ban?
So if in this language where it says, should the Holyoke zoning code be amended prior to the expiration of the moratorium period to regulate data centers, the moratorium shall terminate on the effective date of amendment. That doesn't mean they're now all allowed. It means whatever we've created in that 2-year time period, or however long it takes us. If it takes us less time, it takes us less time, that then goes into effect. So if we move the committee forward, and in December, they share with us their report to council, and then we send to ordinance and planning board in order for them to then modify the zoning code based on what the information was that was shared with us. We would then vote on that. That proposal could be an outright ban in all zones. It could be, we want to accept, 1 or 2 megawatt facilities by special permit in certain zones. Whatever that is that comes out of that work from ordinance and planning board based on what we hear from the committee, that's what we would then use to address the moratorium.
I would be more comfortable if the word ban was in here somewhere. Thank you.
Councilor Penich?
Yes, I'm sorry, one last point to that, and I think I have not been through earlier. I will also add that even if we have the committee, if I'm understanding our legal advice properly, at any point, say, any one of us could look at the Mansfield ordinance and say, hey, this looks pretty great. We need to make 2 changes for Holyoke. Let's ask the planning board to look at this, and we don't even have to wait for the advisory committee. If it looks good to them and it looks good to us, we can pass that in 2.5 months. Now, is that understanding correct, or is this going to somehow tie us to what the advisory committee does?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at that. I don't think it's going to tie the hand to the council. It's merely offering advice and doing some research. And originally, it was going to be an ad hoc committee that could have been done by a rule under the council's rules. But there was some concern that it wouldn't have to follow the parameters of the open meeting law. And that's certainly not something that this council wanted to entertain. So the idea is you have this committee created by ordinance, and you'll take testimony, have public hearings, do whatever is necessary to get a report back to the council by a date concerning these matters. And from there, the council will then determine what to do next.
Okay, so my concern is, I don't want to be bound by what the committee does. I want to make sure that, I have no problem with the committee doing the work that I'm tasking them with, but I also want to make sure that if for any reason we don't want to wait for their report, or we don't like what seems to be developing, any councilor can do as they could do tomorrow without the advisory committee, which is file a new order, set the 48 process going, and if the council prefers that, we can enact that. I don't want to be tied down to what a body we don't control does.
Well, as you know, 48 supersedes the local rule. So in this case, it would trigger 48 timelines. And there would be no provision against the council enacting an ordinance of any kind during the period of the either moratorium or ban.
Okay, I wanted to be completely sure because, it sounded like we're setting out a timeline when we would get to the committee's timeline. And, I don't have committees.
Yes, ma'am, we all have. That's for sure. You take on a life of their own sometimes.
Councilor Devine?
Yeah, really quickly, this ad hoc committee, we would control the interviewing of the people that are interested in it. So if somebody came before us and was interested in the ad hoc, you could certainly say, are you interested in a ban or a moratorium? And if they say ban, you got your answer. So I think the ad hoc committee is going to have some power, so to speak, to give us more information, okay? And then we go from there. But I don't think they have the power to set ordinance. We do.
Yeah.
All right. On the motion, which is approving the moratorium with recommendation, but moving the ban language forward with the modified warehouse definition and section 4. Do a roll call vote, vote and see where we stand. Councilor Rivera?
No.
Councilor Talheimer?
No.
Councilor McGrath-Smith? Yes. Councilor Penich?
Yes.
Councilor Bacon?
No.
The motion fails. Is there another motion?
Well, I will let Councilor
Rivera or Talheimer?
Go ahead, I'll go with the original motion, the original language with the warehouse attached and with the extension to section 4 included, if that's possible.
So the motion is to use the same language that we sent to council last time, but adding in section 4 and adding in the strike through in the warehouse definition.
If I may, real quick, Madam Chair.
Is there a second first?
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
I have a question under discussion.
Under discussion, we have Rivera and then Bacon.
Yes, and I say this because in the past, we have sent to full council without recommendation multiple times. And here, I'm feeling like it's in either a here or there situation when on other occasions, it's been where we've sent things to full council, even though it didn't, if you knew it wasn't gonna pass, it went without recommendation. I'm trying to understand how right now it's yes or black and white, where in other situations, it's been gray, I guess, if that makes sense.
It's our responsibility to send to council a recommendation.
All right, I got that. I'm just saying from my prior experience, I've seen it multiple times get sent to full council with a gray area in a sense, for lack of better terms.
Councilor Bacon and then Councilor Talheimer.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councilor Rivera, a motion could be made to send recommendations without a committee majority. We have done that before. That could be a legitimate motion. My question is around section 4. Now, I'm not an expert on data centers, but in the course of the communications I've received, I've been told we have more than one in the city. So if we're carving out one data center here in section 4, what happens to the other ones? And my other question is, where did we get 12 megawatts? Because the other information I've heard, and I haven't seen a document, so I don't know if it's fact or not, I've heard that the Green Performance Center already is approved for more than 12 megawatts. So if they're already approved for more than 12 megawatts, I don't think we can set an ordinance retroactive and say we're taking it away. So where do we get 12 in this document? Is it legal that put it in? So where did we get 12?
So I'll speak to that. So in terms of, I heard two questions. One is, what about their data centers? In terms of standalone data centers, the only one that we have is the computing center. We do have data center operations that are occurring attached to other entities and businesses, but they're not standalone data centers.
Somebody named a lab of some sort as a separate data center. I don't even know what it is, but it was named to me that it's a data center.
Councilor Talheimer?
I believe it's attached through MIT.
Well, this is.
I believe you're talking about the Lincoln one. It's, I believe, attached to MIT.
Councilor Purcell, did you want to
I
speak?
think it might be on the Bay State Medical Center by the mall.
I'm just raising that point.
Yep.
And if we have not spoken with the Green Performance Center and we do not know what they are approved to do, how can we pass this?
I was able to reach out to the computing center and speak to them about the ban, and also about, because it came out of council, that folks had concerns about wanting to make sure that we were naming language that in effect didn't feel like yanking the rug out from underneath them when we had already made prior commitments to them as a city. And in my conversations with them, initially in the site planning work that they had done, they had built out over several phases where it could go as high as 40. In my conversations with them, and this is a very different time, that it made more sense to name it based on the current phase they're right in now. and to name 12 as something that felt respectful of their current plans based on machinery and parts they had already purchased, based on ductwork that had already been run, by transformer pads that had already been laid. That was the number that felt respectful of the fact that we are creating a ban or a moratorium in the middle of them already existing here in our city.
So you chose that number.
I did.
So what I will say is if they already have authorization to go up to whatever the number is, 20 or 40, we cannot retroactively pass this and say, now it's 12 magically. And I mean, I heard the CEO of the Green Performance Center say, if we can't expand, we're gonna find another site. That's what I heard him say. So this to me freezes them. Anyway, that's my point. I will not be voting for this. Thank you.
I will say that the reason why for me that made sense is that it was a respectful action given the need to meet them where they are currently at as an existing entity in our city, while also naming that the conditions are different now. And there's a lot that we still have to learn and understand about data centers before we can make any decisions that I feel are research-based that are specific to Holyoke. I have read a lot about nationally what has been happening, but I will admit, like I think most of us can, that there's still a lot to understand about how they operate here and what possible impacts would be to our city moving forward. Councilor Rivera?
Yeah, I guess for me, is where was the granting authority? Like, where does that go? Just for information for myself and so that I can tell residents too at the same time, because you would think that the council would somewhat have a play somewhere, but it seems that, again, this is why I push for a ban, but everyone is different, that once you allow something by right or any of that stuff, little by little, it continues to grow and continues to do its thing, even though, I mean, you go from the potential of it growing to 40, from what I'm hearing, which is, I hope, I don't know, it's not, I can't take it as factual, and I'm not saying you're lying, I'm just saying that, like, I mean, you said it, my bad, I'm not saying you're lying, but the reality is that, like, even if it's got potential to go to 15, where? Like, how does that, like, who do we talk to? Is it just the economic department that has that decision? Or is it just the mayor's office that has that decision? Like, because for me, when we're on, like, I'm trying to go through the public process with the people, and you can't do that if all of a sudden you find out later on that there's a data center here, there's a data center there, there's this here, there's there, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, but you've been allowing them anyways. I haven't. I never voted for any of that stuff, and not for the first time. 10 years ago, or whenever it first came about, I wasn't even here. I was incarcerated. I couldn't even say nothing, to be honest. But the reality is that I am here now, and I can say something now. For me, it's, what is the process? Who do we ask? Who do they ask to get that extension, to get more, to grow to 15, to grow to 40? And are residents involved in that process? Because it is impacting residents, and now there is actual residents that live literally right across the canal. And again, if we look at the demographics and the income levels, we see who we impact once again. So for me, again, there's a lot of information that continues to come out now as we do this. And that's amazing to me that, like, I don't want to continue to say that there's, like, stuff going on behind the scenes, but to learn some of this stuff now, how is it, like, I don't know, it's just a little frustrating too at the same time. So I appreciate you guys sharing that. Thank you.
To me, it speaks to the need for the committee. We need to actually take the time to gather the research and for it to be presented to City Council. And that's the reason why you form it in ordinance and you make it a body that follows all of the public meeting laws. That's why. I have Councilor Sullivan and then Thalheimer.
Yeah, one thing I haven't heard, in carving out these exceptions, we've focused a lot on the high-speed computing center. You know, ISO New England has a data center, all right? And that's just one example, all right? There's also quite a few data storage centers. Lincoln Labs has a data storage center in Holyoke. Yeah, you better think this through clear and not rush this. That's all I can say. And for those who don't know what ISO New England is, that's the facility that controls the grid from Montreal to Philadelphia.
Councilor Thalheimer and then Anderson Burgos.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I think part of this goes back to that principal use thing that we've been discussing. If we think about principal use as a freestanding structure versus a non-principal use, the data centers at different places, server rooms, those kinds of things, those are different animals. Clearly, this committee is at an impasse. Do we have to send it back with a recommendation? Can we send back both and say we are unable to come to consensus on this? Because what I'm hearing kind of across the board is that people feel that a moratorium is the safest boat in the harbor, versus what is the thing that gives us the most protection. We cannot decide. We cannot decide as a committee. The people have said very clearly what they want. That is not necessarily how process is going to go, and this is going to go back in some form in front of City Council next week, and that is going to be an opportunity for public comment. This is also an opportunity for discussion. Are there instances in which committees can't make a recommendation and it has to go back to the full council for the vote?
If I may, you've already taken a vote, so you need to rescind that vote and take up a new vote to have no recommendation.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is from Councilor Rivera, which is to move the ban language forward, along with striking out the definition from warehouses that allows data centers and adding section 4. We're under discussion for that vote now, and we will have that vote. Any further discussion? On the motion. Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Talheimer,
Yes.
Counselor Bacon,
No.
Counselor Panich,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath-Smith, yes. We'll move it to council. And I think everyone in this room sort of knows there's some messiness there. All right. I'm gonna call just a 5-minute recess before we take up items 4 and 5.
Hopefully the president will call a special meeting, huh?